guys, my name is Mike Carleo, and this is my third installment on my How to Build Your Chops playlist. And today, I'm going to be speaking about hammer-ons and pull-offs. So, when we talk about building your chops, it doesn't always mean with the pick. While that's very important, hammer-ons and pull-offs can also increase our speed and also increase our chops. Now, all the great players have hammer-ons and pull-offs down pat. Whether it's Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Robin Ford, Jimi Hendrix, all the great players, Slash, Jimmy Page, they all have very, very good technique when it comes to hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, what is a hammer-on? And what is a pull-off? A hammer-on is just when you literally hammer on your finger to make the sound of another note without re-articulating with the pick. So for instance, literally slapping down your finger to fret a new note without having another pick. Now the opposite goes for a pull-off. You're going to actually pull off the string in a downward motion, as I explain later during our exercises, without re-articulating with the pick as well. So if I pick a note from above and I want to go to a note underneath, I can just pull off just like that with either any of the fingers that are above. Now, this can also lead to trilling, which I will explain in another installment, but right now we'll stick with this. So the most important thing that I can say about hammer-ons and pull-offs is that it increases our fluidity when we play. Now, I mentioned all the great players before. Those are some of the most fluid players that I have listened to and that most of the world has listened to. And it's not because of how fast they can play, it's because of their phrasing and how well they can do hammer-ons and pull-offs that creates a continuity to their phrasing. So, with these exercises, you'll be able to get a good handle and a good foundation on how to get hammer-ons and pull-offs better. So, let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with a basic hammer-on exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to play our basic pentatonic scale, and all we're going to be doing, instead of picking twice on each string, because there's 2 notes per string, we're only going to be articulating the new string and then hammering on to that second note. So the basic, we're going to start in A minor, so basic pentatonic. Okay, and then what we're going to be doing is we're going to pick that first string with a down. Okay, the 6th string, the big E on the 5th fret. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hammer on to the next note, to the C. And then we're going to go to the next string, pick down, and then hammer on to the E, pick down to the G, hammer on to the A, and so forth. So 2 important things that I'm actually doing that I want to point out is that the first thing is that I am slapping onto that string. I think I reiterated it back in the introduction, but the most important thing when hammering on is not to push into the neck. A lot of people think that if you push harder, the sound will come out. But what actually happens is if you slap, you know, the string will be fretted better. And then also the sound will be better. So, okay, so really slap hard into the fret, and obviously the most important thing, you know, is to make sure you're close to the fret as possible without being on top. That'll really help. So if you're too far, you're going to get some of that type of sound. Now the second thing is that when I am hammering on, and when I'm going down the strings, my right hand, my picking hand, is picking the strings that are underneath that. What I mean by underneath is the bottom strings as I'm going up. So just in general, when you pick, you want to have that right hand muting the bottom of the string, just so you don't have any overtones because of the hammering on. So because when you hit the neck, you're going to make the other strings vibrate as well. So if I just pick this up, really muted. All right, so that is the hammer-on part, and then if you go backwards, you'd be pulling off instead. So now, you're going to pick the top note up and then pull off to the lower note. Almost drew a blank. So pick up, then pull off. Okay, so a technique thing that I'm doing, but there's 2 things. The first thing is actually pulling off the string. I'm literally pulling down off the string. That is the most important thing you can do, and it's not coming off the string. That's not going to really do anything because all you're doing is just letting go of the fret. You need to literally almost pluck the string with your left hand instead of plucking it with your right hand. So, okay. It gets a little harder as you get down to the bottom strings because of the angle in which your hand is in, because your thumb will be underneath the neck. It's really hard. I can't reach with my thumb being over the neck. So when your hand's underneath, you'll be able to reach and pull off. Now, muting-wise, the second thing that I want to talk about is that when I'm going backwards, my index finger is going to be muting the top strings as I'm moving down. So I don't have any of overtones for those. So now if I move here, the top two strings, which since I'm on the G string, are not going to be heard. So I have to keep that type of, I'm still arching the knuckle, but my finger's being flat. Now the only way I can do that is if I rotate my thumb correctly. And I speak about that in my Guitar for Dummies series about the thumb. There's one thing that I really focus on when I start with my students is creating good hand position so we don't create injury, but also it helps us with technique. So that's another thing of really pulling off. When you want to put both of them together, hammer on and pulling off, doing it a complete scale, during that last string to turn around, you're just going to pick down, hammer on, and then pull off, and then pick up to the B string. So here's the scale with the hammer-ons and the pull-offs. Let's check the muting. All good. So that's very important. So there's two things for technique. The first thing is to make sure you're slapping on or you're pulling down off the string, depending on if you're doing a hammer-on or pull-off. And the second thing is to make sure you're muting the correct strings. Now, when you're doing these scales and this type of exercise, you want to try to keep the rhythm as even as possible. So I strongly recommend practicing with the metronome. I first start out with quarter notes, then move to eighth notes, then move to 16th notes, and make sure everything is really, really even. What I've noticed is when I teach hammer-ons to my students, they tend to hammer on pretty quickly, and that first note is more of an afterthought. We have to make sure that all notes have the same amount of value, especially with eighth notes. If I'm going 1 and 2 and I don't want to do this. It doesn't sound good, and that's not going to help us get our fluidity better when we're playing. Okay? So you can apply this to any type of scale. You know your modes, all the way through. Okay? It's a little harder with the modes, obviously, than it is with the pentatonic scales, but it really, really helps you get the stretching and also the hammer-on and pull-offing so we can start working on more than just the pentatonic scales. Obviously, you can go through all 5 shapes. So it's just very important you get the first one even, you're muting, you're slapping, and you're pulling off. So this is a great way in which you can get your hammer-ons and pull-offs much better and start getting that strength in those type of articulations. So the last thing I want to talk about is when you get the speed up, the most important thing is to make sure that the volume or the dynamic of each hammer-on and pull-off are the same. So if a hammer-on is at a certain volume, you want to make sure that the pull-off is the same dynamic, whether it's mezzo forte or really soft or really loud, that it's the same as the pick and the hammer-ons are the same as the pull-offs. Now in my experience, the pull-offs are always more because you're pulling and you're actually plucking. This one, hammer-ons, you're kind of slapping down. So you have to make sure that not only is the rhythm even, but the dynamics are even as well. All right, and that's it. So these are great exercises in which you can practice your hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now it's very important to pay attention to what I talked about in this exercise. The first thing is obviously the correct technique, slapping and pulling down off the string. Your dynamics, making sure they're all the same or you're intentionally doing something differently when you're playing. Also, the evenness in which you play your hammer-ons and pull-offs with the picking is so important. That's what creates our fluid sound. And that's what makes us sound so effortless when we start soloing. And the last thing I want to talk about is also the muting. So you're muting with the right hand when you're going up, and you are muting with the index finger when you're coming back down. Now, once you get a good handle on these hammer-ons and pull-offs, you can start learning some great licks, awesome blues licks, any type of rock lick. And then you can start creating all of this ammunition when you want to start soloing yourself, and then you can get your own great sound. So, if you want to get to learn about me more, you can check me out at my website below, michaelcarleo.com, for more information. Thanks for checking out this installment. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.